After discovering some errors in version 1 of this film, I present version 2. I found this vintage photograph of a landscape with what appears to be a windmill and water tower, among other vintage photographs of Brynathan. But I was pretty confused when I looked at this photograph. It appeared that that structure in the background might be the Academy of the New Church, but I just did not get it. Then Phil Farrar said, "Nope, that's the Academy of the New Church." Then Justin Oedner pointed out that this structure is where New Church Live is, the former home of Ray and Sylvia Cooper and Locke and Dorothy Brown. And this structure over here is the former Bostock House, once owned by Locke and Jean Pitcairn and now by Jennings Durand. And I think the structure just to the right is 2771 South Avenue, the original Smith House. I'm not sure, but that's what I think. Here is what the Smith House looked like today. Please note the gable end. It appears that those two houses are very close, but in reality they are not, so we're talking about angles. Look how far apart the houses really are, with the Gunther's house in between. Now let's take another look at the New Church Live building, because that might really help us in solving this question as to from where the photograph was taken. Please note that this is a 3/4 view of this house, and you can see two sides. We see the New Church Live building like this. Here is an aerial photograph of that building from Google Earth. In the original photograph, we can see the left side and the bottom side of this structure. The line of sight in the original photograph looks something like this. If we extend that line of sight down to the southwest, we'll cross Alden Road and end up roughly at the top of the hill on Fetters Mill Road, right by the house that is now owned by Heather McCurdy. Now, it just so happens that Heather McCurdy's house is virtually next door to the top of Rose Lane. Phil Farrar thought that the picture might have been taken from the top of Rose Lane. Now look at this very vintage photograph of Brynathan that was taken from Creek Road. You can see the Brynathan post office and train station in the bottom right. And in the center of the photograph, more in the distance, you can see the hill going up Fetters Mill Road. Just to the left of the top of Fetters Mill Road, you can see the house that now belongs to Heather McCurdy. Look, to the left of it, you can clearly see a windmill and a water tower, and you might even be able to see a structure underneath that. Could this be the same water tower? I think so, especially after hearing from Stephen Lindruth and Justin Oedner. We have a direct line of sight from New Church Live to an existing water tower. That has to be it. But let's try to prove it. Justin Oedner posted this vintage map of the neighborhood. This vintage map of the area shows the house that is now owned by Heather McCurdy. Could that structure to the right be the water tower? I'll bet it is. Now follow the bottom line, which is our line of sight to the New Church Live building. And then next door, and also visible in the photograph, is the Pendleton house. And there we see the Smith house on South Avenue. The gable end will clearly be visible from the water tower location. And there's the Bostock house. And much of the gable end of that house is also visible from the water tower. From the vantage point of the water tower, those two houses are going to appear very close, as they do in the photograph. Assuming this map is accurate as far as the Academy of the New Church goes, it is the clincher, because you can see that from the water tower you can clearly see Benaid Hall and Echarms Hall, and even the old library, just as you can in the photograph. I hope you have enjoyed version 2 of the film Whose Windmill Is That? This version is necessary because there were some errors in version 1. Some errors probably made because the Academy of the New Church looks so much closer with no trees. The original spot from which I thought this photograph had been taken turns out to be about 200 yards from where we now think it was taken, and that is back by the water tower at the house that is now owned by Heather McCurdy.